This episode of Tutia Bruja is sponsored by Floodwitch, dedicated to providing information that helps you build an ethical witchcraft practice by raising marginalized voices while reclaiming weird. This is Floodwitch. Check it out at floodwitch.com.
I can see you clearly. Tutia
Bruja. You're listening to Tutia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos, your host. It's our Quinceañera. That's right, 15 episodes, everyone. Thank you for being on the journey. I love the show. I love y'all. It's been a blast. So for today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that originally I had planned to launch the show in October because witches, right? But when we were at the peak of the pandemic, I was inside a lot. I was working from home. I had a lot of work dwindling and I just needed something to stay sane. And so I started creating Tutia Bruja. And yeah, I remember talking to people and being like, yeah, this probably isn't going to air until October. And all of them were kind of just like, oh, I decided to release early. And everyone has been giving us such positive reviews and just, recommending us to friends and family. I love that. So thank you. For today's episode, Nadia is on, and Nadia is her alias. She is a nurse in the New York area, and, when New York was the epicenter, she had to watch a lot of her fellow nurses and medical professionals have to basically go to war every day. And she talks about kind of what that was like, and I think that it's an important perspective because we're not over this pandemic yet, and I think a lot of us, myself included, we tend to get a little lax on how to deal with it. Today, I have my friend Nadia on the show. So thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's so interesting to me because I just read something about, people act like this pandemic is over, a thing called caution fatigue. That is kind of an issue now. Could you kind of explain what that is for people who might not be aware?
Yeah, so it comes from where we have, with medical professionals, we have something called alert fatigue, whereas like when you're in a unit and you have like alarms going off and all these like alerts from your computer telling you need to do this, you need to do that. People kind of start getting used to them, and so it just becomes part of the background, and so the urgency that's supposed to come with it doesn't come anymore because people are just used to it. So caution fatigue is almost the same thing. Like we hear in the news all the time how horrible it is, how bad it is, and how dangerous everything is, and that we need to be wearing masks, that we need to be at home. And so we hear it so much that after a while it just becomes background noise, and the urgency and the importance of it just gets lost because we just hear it all the time.
And I definitely see it a lot. Like you'll be talking to someone and they might like lower their mask or, they just act like this is a frivolous thing. It's just so scary. You're in New York, you are in a place where there's a lot of people. So you really have to hope that everyone around you is taking as much care of themselves as you are yourself.
Right. We have a great governor, so he's been pretty much on point and doing what he's supposed to do. And we were the epicenter for a while, and thank goodness we're not anymore,
Yeah, that's definitely shifted during the pandemic. What was it like at the worst of it?
So first, let me give you a little background. So nursing is really diverse and where you can do a lot of things with nursing. So I've worked as a few things throughout my nursing career. I've been an informaticist, I've been an educator, I've been an administrator, but I always come back to being an ER nurse. I love the ER. I love the hustle and bustle. I like the busyness. And I do have ADD, so it kind of goes with it. I'm not seeing the same people all the time. It's like in and out, in and out, in and out. So it's really, really great. I love the ED. That being said, I worked in adult and pediatric, but when COVID hit, I was actually in the pediatric ER. I had been there for about, I think, 2 years now, just like straight in the pediatric ER. And so it was a bit surreal because we didn't have in the pediatric ER the numbers that the adult ER had. And so you would see like our rooms would be like empty. Maybe we'll have like 2 patients and they were suspected COVID. So we would have to have our donning and doffing and all that. But then when you walked across the hallway to the adult ER, it was like all hell had broken loose. So it was just like 2 worlds. It was so strange and it was stressful because we felt like that urgency. Like I wanted to go help them, but we couldn't because we were in another unit. They really got inundated. Like they had patients all over the place with tubes down their throat because they couldn't breathe. Patients that had passed, people that you wouldn't think passed, that you would say, oh, this person can walk away. It's going to be, in and out. It's, we'll give them some medication. They usually would just walk out, and all of a sudden they're collapsing on the floor and you can't revive them. So it was really stressful, but I think more so for the nurses in the adult ER. And because of that, I felt like we didn't get the brunt of it. They did. I started doing like online petitioning and I did some fundraising and things. So I was able to get food for them. I got them some shield. I needed to be useful because every time I would walk in there, my heart would just, I don't know, it was just so stressful. And then we had friends that were getting sick, co-workers that were getting sick. It was so bad. Like it was hard. It's really hard. I can't even explain how it felt.
I can't even imagine. I saw a lot of your efforts to fundraise, and I was really impressed by that because it seems like in a lot of these instances, it's a lot of people having to take care of their own, which for better or for worse, like I think is something that has definitely been shown during this pandemic. It really just reminded me that this is nothing new to brown and black people. Like brown and black people have always had to find ways to like survive and take care of their own. It's just how it happened with the pandemic. It was different.
Yeah, it was definitely different. I don't think, you expect your hospitals to be prepared. You expect your government to be prepared, and you expect to have all these backups to help you. And then you realize that you don't. And it's not necessarily because of, I don't know if it's that somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. If it was just that everybody needed everything at the same time. That could have been a factor too. I don't know what the factor was. It was hard because, we would come in every day and we would be like, are we going to have our PPE today? Are we going to have masks? Are we going to have face shields, or are we going to have a gown? Like it was hard because every patient had to be treated like they had COVID because you didn't know who had COVID. Like we had some patients coming in, when to be honest with you, they came in for something totally different. And then when they went to x-rays, we realized that they had COVID. You just didn't know who had it and who didn't. And the bad thing with that is like, oh, well, if they had it and they were fine, you didn't know it because they were fine, then what's the big deal? The big deal is that they might be fine, but what if I get it and I'm not fine? There is no way of knowing who's going to come out of it alive and who's not. Everybody's like, oh, it's because people die because they have pre-existing conditions, or people die because they're older. The truth is, none of that really matters. I've seen young people die. I've seen people die that have no pre-existing conditions. I have seen, it's so arbitrary the way this thing is going about attacking people. It's very, very arbitrary. There's like no pattern.
And it's like every time you hear an update about what it does, it's completely different. Like I just read an article that they're saying that now it can cause infertility in men and it can be transmitted sexually.
And then I saw another article where they were saying like the women that said that they got it or something, like they haven't had their period, or it's just so weird. Like,
what was it like just to try and stay balanced with that every day? I know that you're a practicing witch too. Like, was brujeria involved at all?
I think my brujeria is like a new word for me, I think. And it's only because, in society, it has such a bad connotation for so long. It's like a new idea for me, really, that within the last maybe 2 years that I've kind of embraced, because I realized that my traditions and my practices are actually brujeria. And so my things are more like a day-to-day kind of thing. Like I do it every day and it's just normal. So I light my candles every day. I pray to my ancestors every day. I'll pray to my deities every day. When I'm extra fatigued and tired, I'll do my incense and try to like center myself and meditate a little bit. So those were kind of like day to day, but my candles were more during COVID. Like when we were at the epicenter, like instead of the one candle that I usually had, I think I had like 3 candles going at the same time. And my prayers were more often. My asks were a little bit more because usually I don't ask, my only ask is, oh, let my family be okay and let my children not suffer, your basic things, But with COVID, it was like I was praying for everybody and all my friends and all my coworkers, and let me get through this and let me help them and let me get this money so that I can get them something so that they can feel appreciated. I just feel like there was more urgency and there was more need. Like I felt like I was asking so much more than I was giving because, you do have to give your ancestors and your deities thanks and you have to give them your offerings. And I felt like I was asking a lot more than I was giving at that time.
Not only was I asking for a lot, but I was asking for a lot when my altar was dusty. I'm like, who the fuck do I think I am? Like,
exactly. Like, what am I doing?
Honestly, I think that because like I pray to my ancestors more than I pray to anybody else. Like there are other like deities and stuff that I have. Like I pray to Santa Muerta and stuff like that. But my ancestors are always my first line because I'm like, if anybody's gonna help us, it's gonna be people who came before me who suffered a lot,
Right.
But this pandemic was something scary. And I just felt so much for like the people who aren't close to their families. Like I'm very blessed to be within a pretty close radius, but there's so many people who live on the other side of the world and I can't even imagine what it's like, to have to worry about them on a daily basis.
Yeah, or find out that they're sick or something's going on and you can't do anything about it. That's just so frustrating, I think. Unfortunately, I don't know my ancestors that well. Well, I didn't. Let me rephrase that. I didn't know my ancestors that well because my family came from other countries, and my dad passed. So his traditions and his family, like I've kind of lost touch on those ancestors. And then with my mom's ancestors, people the stories got lost, So I didn't have a lot. I had a couple of pictures here and there, but I didn't know them. So I didn't really pray to them or anything because I didn't really associate with them. I didn't feel connected to them. So I would pray mostly to all of this. I was very Catholic. I was brought up Catholic. My grandmother was Catholic. We were very much into the Virgin Mary. When I was younger, she did appear to me a couple of times, and I used to pray to her. I felt very connected with her. I use mother figures a lot in my practice, like Yemaya. I use Kuan Yin. My mom is Buddhist, so she gave me a Kuan Yin, so I use Kuan Yin. Anything that really represents mother, I use that. I pray to that. I ask. And that seems to be my connection with the higher power because I believe that energy is energy. And basically, these deities are just manifestations of the same energy. It doesn't matter who you pray to or who you ask. It's always to this one higher power and just how they appear to you so that you can identify with them better, Mother has always been this thing with me. Unfortunately, though, now that's kind of shifting because I've gained 2 ancestors within the last 4 months. I lost my grandmother and we lost my aunt. And so now they're there in my altar and I pray to them too now. So I think I'm going to be doing that a little bit more.
And you can leave out like things that that they enjoyed that really bonded you and them. As unfortunate it is obviously to lose a family member, I think that there is some good that comes with that connection. If you're willing to make the effort, can still be there.
We were really close. Our family thankfully has always been close in terms of my grandmother's children and then us grandchildren. We have always been close. Everything we do together. I'll post pictures and you'll see 20 of us at one time. That's a good thing, because we have each other and so I know them. I don't feel like I'm trying to connect with some person that I never met or that I didn't know, but like you said, what they liked or what they did or, what their thoughts were. I know some things that I don't even have to pray. I know that they're going to scold me. Oh, why are you doing that? I don't even have to ask because I already know where they're coming from, what they're going to tell me because I already know them. I'm grateful for that. I'm sad and I miss them and it hurts that they're gone, but at the same time I know that they're not gone and I'm glad that I still have that connection with them.
That's really important to have as many, people watching over you during this time. Every day I just kind of feel like I'm losing it a little bit because I don't understand the big issue with wearing a mask. And to me it just comes down to these are people who have never been told no, who have never been told that they can't do something. And they're just freaking out. I don't think that wearing a tiny bit of cloth is that big of a deal.
Unfortunately, in this country, we're very, and in many other countries, but more so in this country, I think, people are very much centered on me. What's my dream? What's my need? What do I want? How do I get it? It's all about me. And so people don't really think about the greater good. In a lot of other countries, they're more about community. Let's all work together to clean up the oceans or let's work together to clean up our neighborhood. Let's do this. And, it's more community based. And so when you have a society that's me based, you don't want to do anything that inconveniences you just because it's going to help somebody else. And that's the problem. A mask, I guess it will protect you, but you do it more so to protect the person that you're with, protect the people around you. Because if you cough, there are droplets that come out of your mouth. Sometimes some people speak and they spit a lot. It's just the way they are. They produce a lot of saliva. And so there are droplets going all over the place while you're speaking. Some people, when they're just breathing, like they breathe through their mouth. So there are droplets coming out of their mouth all the time because they're mouth breathers. You have to have that mask to protect the people around you because, like I said, you might not know that you have it. Feel absolutely fine and then find out you have something. If everybody is wearing a mask, then nobody is passing it on to anybody else. You know what I mean? So if I'm wearing a mask and I have it, I'm putting that one barrier. And then you're wearing a mask, that's a second barrier. My mask might not catch every droplet, but then whatever it didn't catch, yours will.
I guess my question then is, what was it like when you were the epicenter? Because there's so many people who think that this is a political thing. What percentage did you maybe interact with or see that they had it and they just were like, no, this isn't real? Like they just almost like went into shock.
We had a few because, especially in the beginning, I was one of those people that in the beginning, like that first week, I was like, oh, this is just the flu. And I think I have a past post that I put in Facebook or something. I'm like, oh, I don't understand why people are making such a big deal. This is just like the flu. It's just a virus. It'll go away. I was one of those. And then I started seeing people come in. Oh my goodness. This is not like the flu at all. This is crazy. This is ridiculous. I cannot even fathom like what is going on. So we had a lot of people like me where in the beginning, we were just like, oh, it's just another virus. Oh, it's just, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. But it's been months and it hasn't passed. So I think we have a lot of people that were in shock that they had it in the beginning. And I think even now, like I spoke to somebody who said they tested positive for the antibodies, meaning at some point he had it. But he's like, I've never felt sick. He's like, they tested me for the virus and it was negative. So I don't have it now, but I'm positive for the antibodies. So that means that at some point I did have it and I don't recall being sick. Like I never had a cough. I never had anything. He's like, how did I get antibodies and I've never had it? I'm like, you probably did. You just didn't get sick. You were asymptomatic. And they were like, that's just insane. Like they didn't understand how that could be possible. So there are a lot of people like that, walking around thinking they're not sick and they're sick.
That's my biggest concern. I've been checking my temperature and I haven't had like a large spike, and it sucks to be one of those people who are asymptomatic. If you have been asymptomatic and you've been doing everything right and you had it and then you didn't even realize it, I don't know. That's the scariest part to me, to not even know.
Right, to not even know, because if you were doing everything right, then you don't really have to worry. Because my biggest fear with that would be like, how many people did I infect? But if you're doing everything right, you hopefully didn't infect anybody else. But imagine the people that are not. And then they end up finding out that they had it. How many people? There's no way, if you're not wearing a mask, how many people you infected? If you're not using hand sanitizer and you're touching every single thing, like you touch your eyes, you touch your nose, you whatever, you touch your face, and then you're touching the knobs. And how many people have you infected? There's no way to know.
That was something that I really worried about too. Like the Ozarks, like made TMZ news, which is like, I think 4 hours from me or something, because people were just going out to the lake and pretending like it wasn't real. Right. I know that there was a big spike after that because they were trying to blame it on protesters. It was interesting to see the shift in people who, it seemed like were caring. Like, I feel like New York was definitely the spearhead of like, hey, everybody, we should like stay inside, do what we're supposed to do. I'm sure in New York for a while, like everybody knew at least somebody who had been impacted.
Yes. If you speak to anybody in New York, they'll know, oh yeah, my neighbor or my this or my that. Everybody knows somebody that was impacted by COVID. That is definitely true. It's like, how they have the 7 degrees of separation from, what is it, from Kevin Bacon or whatever? It's like 2 degrees for COVID.
I personally have just had one person in my life. I had to think about that. I was like, I've only known one person who's been impacted, who's had the virus. A lot of people here, that's rare, like people haven't known anybody. So not to say that there's any justification for why they feel the way that they feel.
Yeah, but isn't that the way things are for everything? Isn't that the whole thing with the racism and these Black Lives Matters and all that? It doesn't impact you. You think it's not real.
It is a privilege that so many people haven't been impacted, and they should want to keep it that way,
And I think they should want to keep that privilege, like keep it out. If I was in a community that hadn't been impacted by it, I would be like, close down those gates. Do not let anybody in. Do not let anybody out. Everybody wear your mask because we don't have it and we don't want to get it.
That's why like New Zealand has been so on top of it because, they were one of the first countries to really like lock everything down and really just make sure that their citizens were taken care of. There were a lot of countries that did things the right way, and there were a lot of countries that did things the wrong way. I think that's all really that needs to be said. One last thing I want to ask. The protests haven't ended.
Right.
There's people who are still getting together and rightfully, protesting the violence that this country puts upon Black and brown individuals. What would you suggest would be the most essential supplies for anybody who's going out and protesting? Not even just from like COVID perspective, but also as supplies if, police turn on the group.
So my kids went to a few protests and they went as volunteers. And I think if you're going to go to a protest, also consider going as a volunteer, not just as a protester, which I think is an important thing, to give out masks. Definitely you have to have your mask. I would suggest even more than a mask, a face shield, because a face shield is like a plastic thing that covers your face, your whole face. So if you get like any liquids thrown at you or anything, it's going to kind of fall on the mask and kind of give you some time to deal with it, So a face shield, the mask, the face shield, some milk, in case you get tear gassed or whatever, you need to have some milk. Water, definitely, because, the sun and, you're going to get thirsty and all of that. And you need to like really hydrate. You don't want to be collapsing there from the heat. Another thing, it's not an essential, but something that I always tell, that I've told my children when they went and when they were going out, have your location apps on. So either with a friend or with a family or something where somebody can see where you are at all times. Because I have seen people go missing for hours on end where the family can't find them and somebody had grabbed them, police had grabbed them, had interrogated them, whatever, I'm not going to go into that. But, people do go missing. People do disappear for a while and you don't want that to be. So have some kind of tracker app available and give it to, access to like your friends or your family, your parents, whoever it is that's a trusted individual for you so that they can find you. Tell them exactly where you're going, who you're going with, what the protest is for, so that in case of anything or if it comes out in the news or if shit hits the fan, then, you can kind of have a backup and somebody can be out there actively looking for you in case they can't find you, because it sounds like the worst case scenario, but it does happen. A basic first aid kit, for cuts and scrapes because people do fall while they're marching, and wear your caps, like when you're walking around. Put something on your head. Like I told my kids, you have your mask on and you have your cap on so that it minimizes how much they can see your face and how much they can get to your face, because the less that they can see, the less they can get to your face. So if your eyes are covered from the top, if they throw something, the cap lip is going to kind of protect you. And if they're coming from the bottom, you have your mask and your face shield that are also going to protect you. So, it sounds like a lot of stuff going on your face, but it's really to protect you.
I actually posted a while back ago on the Tutia Bruja Instagram because there were those photos from protesters in Hong Kong. And honestly, some of those protesters truly did think of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't hurt to have more supplies, but I saw that they were wearing construction hats, goggles, they had an umbrella, they had all of these things, and I'll repost that again.
The thing with that, all those supplies are expensive.
That is true.
The best thing to do is to donate money or donate supplies if you have it to these organizations, so that because they do give these things out. Like I said, my daughters have gone and they volunteer. They go out and they give these things out to the people protesting to protect them. Donate to them. Donate to these organizations so that these organizations can protect the protesters.
Two last things that come to mind. Saline solution doesn't hurt to flush your eyes as well if you don't have milk. And then a gas mask if you are pregnant. Individuals who have gone to protest who menstruate have said that their cycle's been off or, they did have a miscarriage. So just be aware of that.
Yes, it's true. The gas masks are definitely, there are a lot out there right now. They're on Amazon. I think they're $30-$40. The gas masks. I don't know how far the delivery is because I think they come from other countries, but there are out there. But again, like I said, another way to help is to give money to these organizations so these organizations can get these supplies, because sometimes delivery is faster when you buy in bulk and it's cheaper when you buy in bulk.
I will say, because if you aren't 100% aware of all the different groups, it doesn't hurt to have that supplies yourself.
Yeah.
definitely donate to these organizations. That's something that like has really been driving me crazy is like people are like, well, where does the money go? And I'm like, as someone who has gone to several protests, it's going to water, it's going to supplies. Every protest that I have gone to has been a Black organized protest, which I always advise people to go to because more than likely the organizers have thought of everything. Like it wasn't this thing that was put together at the last minute. They generally provide information if you are arrested, you know, who to reach out to, because there are organizations that dedicate themselves to bail bonds. These services are out there.
Yeah. Most of the time, like when you give money to them, that's what it's going to, you know, all this pro bono work and all this footwork that needs to be done, this contacting of newscasts and contacting of different kind of social and political figures to kind of get the word out when people are going missing or when people have been attacked or whatever. You know, all of that takes money because you have to pay for internet connections and you have to pay, you know, like all these things that people don't think of that we kind of take for granted and think they're free. They're not free. Somebody has to pay for that. So, you know, the money that you give goes to all of that, you know, goes to all these background things that you might not realize.
So definitely keep donating money, especially if you haven't been able to go out to a protest. Like I understand that for some people, like you don't want to go by yourself, you feel unsafe, whatever.
People are disabled and they can't go, which is a totally valid reason not to go. Like if you feel, you know, I'm going to be honest, like I have a bad back and the first time my kids went, I was like, I don't think I'm going to go because I'm going to be a liability. If we have to run and I'm going to fall, my kids are going to want to help me and I want them to go running away from me, you know, like get away. So you have to kind of think of those things. If you can't go, there are other ways to help. There are definitely other ways, other things you can do.
Nadia, how can people support you? I know that I don't know if you're still raising money for a lot of the nurses, but how can we support you? What can we do to help?
So for now, I'm not raising any more money for the nurses. The census is low here, thank goodness. Our census in the ERs are low, and I was able to get enough donations that I gave to almost the whole hospital in terms of face masks and face shields. Don't try to help me, but if you can help your local hospital, send them some pizza one night or one day, or send them a meal, or, you know, give them some care packages with some little creams or something. Like nurses just love presents. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be just a little keychain and we're like, oh my God, presents. We just love presents. So go to your local hospital or your local care center or wherever and just, you know, give them a little treat and they will be ever grateful. And so will I.
All right, that was episode 15. So thank you again for listening. I hope that you learned something. And if nothing else, it's important to know what kind of supplies to take to a protest. Thank you again. Please rate and subscribe to the show. It helps, one, more people to listen and make sure that you are the first to get the content as soon as it comes out. So you might notice that there is still one episode left. Keep your eyes on your podcast stuff. It will be released today. It's my birthday and I'm a little backed up on life, but it's cool. I do things on my own time. This show is very much a representation of that. Look forward to episode 16, the season finale, coming out soon.
I can see